You keep waiting for the conversation that changes everything, the one where they finally understand, where something shifts behind their eyes and they really get it, what they did, what it cost you, what you needed and never received. You've had versions of the conversation 100 times. In your head, in real life, in letters you never sent. And every time it doesn't happen, every time they deflect, or minimize, or twist it back on you, there's a moment where you think, maybe next time, maybe if I explain it differently, maybe if they were in a better mood, maybe if I finally found the right words. Here's what took me, what takes most people, to long to understand. Some people do not change, not because they can't feel, but because they've decided, consciously or not, that they don't need to. And the most painful thing, in accepting that, it's realizing you already knew. There's a particular kind of waiting that happens in relationships with people who consistently disappoint you. It's not passive, that's the thing. It's active, consuming, almost creative. You are constantly generating new theories for why they behaved the way they did. New frameworks for understanding, new conditions under which, this time, things will be different. They're under a lot of stress right now. They didn't have good parents either. They don't know how. They showed up last week when I needed them. This week just went wrong. If I can just be patient enough, loving enough, clear enough. Psychologists have a name for this pattern. It's called intermittent reinforcement, and it was identified not in relationship research first, but in B.F. Skinner's behavioral labs in the 1950s. Skinner discovered that the most psychologically durable behavior, the hardest to extinguish, wasn't created by consistent rewards. It was created by unpredictable ones. Rats that received food pellets randomly, with no reliable schedule, pressed the lever more obsessively, more persistently, than rats that received food every time. Unpredictable reward creates compulsive seeking. Which means, in plain language, if someone treats you well sometimes and badly sometimes, with no pattern you can reliably predict, your brain does not learn to protect itself. It learns to keep trying. It learns to wait. You are not weak for waiting. You are operating exactly as your neurology was designed to operate when reward is inconsistent. The problem is not your patience. The problem is who you're spending it on. Here is where we need to be honest about something that most content on this topic won't say directly. The question is never can they change. Human beings are capable of change. The brain is plastic. Behavior can be modified. Patterns can be interrupted with sufficient motivation and consistent effort. The question is, do they want to? And that distinction between capacity and desire is where most people get stuck for years, because the person in your life has probably shown you moments of capacity. Moments where they were thoughtful, or honest, or generous. You saw the person they could be. And that vision, that glimpse, is what keeps you there, waiting for that version to become permanent. In 2003, psychologist Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia published research on what he called the psychological immune system, the mind's tendency to protect itself from information that threatens its existing beliefs about the people it loves. What Wilson found is that people systematically discount evidence of negative traits in those they're attached to, not because they're unintelligent, because attachment itself creates a filtering mechanism. The information is there, you have seen who they are. You have evidence, months, years of it, but your attachment filters it, minimizes it, finds exceptions, generates explanations. This is why rational conversations don't work. Why explaining the same thing for the 100th time doesn't change anything. Why showing them evidence of their own behavior leaves them unmoved. Because change requires someone to stop filtering, to let the information in, to tolerate the discomfort of seeing themselves clearly. And here is the clinical reality that is rarely spoken about directly. People with certain personality structures, particularly those with narcissistic, avoidant, or dismissive patterns, have built entire psychological architectures around not doing that. The filtering isn't incidental, it is structural, it is how they function. Asking them to change is asking them to dismantle the thing that makes them feel safe. Most people will not do that voluntarily. Not for love, not for consequence, not for you. That is not a judgment. It is a description of how psychological defense systems work. But it matters enormously for what you decide to do next. I want to name what the hope actually feels like from inside it. It doesn't feel like delusion. It feels like loyalty. It feels like, I see who you could be, and I'm not going to give up on that person just because you're not being them right now. That's not a small thing. It comes from a genuine capacity for love, for patience, for the kind of long-view thinking that good relationships require. The problem is that it's being aimed at someone who has shown you, repeatedly, that the potential version is not the operating version, that the person you love and the person who keeps showing up are not the same person. Psychologist Lunda Bancroft, who spent years working with people in abusive and chronically hurtful relationships, wrote something in Why Does He Do That? That cuts through everything else. Hoping someone will change requires believing that who they are right now is not who they really are. Read that again. Who they are right now is who they really are. Not who they are in their best moments. Not who they are when they need something from you. Not who they were in the beginning. Who they are in the pattern, in the aggregate. Over time, across circumstances, when there are no stakes. I know what you're thinking, but people do change. I've seen it happen. Yes, they do. People change when they want to. When the pain of staying the same exceeds the discomfort of transformation, and when they do the actual work. Therapy, sustained effort, accountability, over an extended period. People do not change because someone who loves them keeps explaining, keeps hoping, keeps absorbing the cost of their patterns. Love is not leverage. It never was. Let's talk about what chronic hope actually costs. Not philosophically, physically, in your daily life. You are making decisions, hundreds of small decisions every day, based on a version of the relationship that you hope will exist, rather than the one that does. I won't bring this up now because they're already stressed. I'll wait until things calm down to say how I actually feel. I'll take on this extra thing because maybe if I make this easier for them, they'll have more capacity to show up. Each of these is a small cost, individually, invisible. Accumulated over months or years, they become the shape of your life. Your nervous system is working overtime. Dr. Janice Keycold Glazer at Ohio State University has produced some of the most rigorous research on the physiological cost of chronically difficult relationships. What her team found, across multiple studies, is that the immune systems of people in high conflict or emotionally invalidating relationships show measurable impairment, slower wound healing, elevated inflammatory markers, compromised stress recovery, not because the relationship is a major acute stressor, because it is a sustained low-grade one. Your body is paying the tax that your mind has normalized, and here is the cost that is hardest to see while you're inside it. Every year you spend oriented towards someone who won't change is a year you are not building towards someone or something that can actually receive what you're capable of giving. That's not said to make you panic. It's said because it's true. And because you deserve to make decisions with accurate information. Accepting that someone won't change is not a single moment. I want to say that clearly because people sometimes describe it as if it's a decision you make once. A clean break, a revelation, and then done. That's not how it works for most people. It works more like this. You come to the understanding, and then the hope comes back, and you come to the understanding again, and the hope comes back again. That oscillation is not failure. It is the actual process. Psychologist Judith Herman, in Trauma and Recovery, describes grief over lost potential, the loss not of what was, but of what was never going to be, as one of the most complex and protracted forms of mourning. Because you are grieving something that technically never existed, a future, a version of a person, a relationship that was possible in glimpses and never sustained. There's no ceremony for that, no clear timeline. The world doesn't recognize this kind of loss with the same seriousness as other losses. But the grief is real, and it needs time. Here is what acceptance requires. Specifically, not generally, stop gathering new evidence. One of the things that keeps people caught is the ongoing project of building the case. Every new incident, every repeated behavior, every fresh disappointment becomes another data point, another reason, another piece of proof. But you don't need more proof. You already have it. The evidence is complete. Gathering more evidence than research, it's a way of staying in contact with the person while telling yourself you're preparing to leave. The second thing, grieve the specific losses, not the abstract one. Not I'm grieving this relationship, too large, too vague to actually process. Instead, I'm grieving that I won't have the experience of being truly known by this person. I'm grieving that the family dynamic I wanted won't happen. I'm grieving the specific conversation I still want to have, that I won't get to have. Name the particular things, grieve them individually. The abstract grief stays abstract and stays. The specific grief moves. Accepting that someone won't change will feel, at first, like loss. Because it is. You are losing the future you imagined, the version of the relationship you worked for, the person you needed them to be. That is a real loss. It deserves to be called that. But here is what else is true. The energy you have been spending on that hope, the monitoring, the explaining, the adjusting, the waiting, that energy does not disappear when you stop directing it at someone who won't receive it. It comes back to you, not all at once, over time, weeks, months, but it comes back. And what you do with it, where you redirect that capacity for patience, for loyalty, for the long view, that becomes the question that matters. You are not giving up on people when you accept who someone is. You are giving up on the belief that your love, specifically yours, enough of it, the right kind of it, is what stands between them and becoming who they should be. That was never your job. It was never supposed to be.